Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and here's my thoughts on Lies of P. Poo Poo Man. This is a Souls clone that was announced around 2 years ago. It made some waves as people were saying, instead of a Souls clone per se, this one's a Bloodborne clone. And a look at the initial trailer makes it plain why people would think such. Now, I never paid too much attention to it, but now that they've released a free demo, I thought, why not give it a shot? So I did. Whilst the game certainly has an aesthetic closer to Bloodborne than Dark Souls, the gameplay is, well, somewhat a mix of Souls and Shadows Die Twice. If you've played any Souls game, you'll be immediately familiar with the style of lock-on, shoulder-based combat, respawning enemies at bonfires that aren't bonfires, they're legally distinct, your healing items restock at them, and so on and so forth. Light attack, heavy attack, block, dodge. Well, the dodge actually in Lies of P, at least starting out, is very underwhelming. But perhaps once you unlock some skills in the skill tree to upgrade it, it'll improve. Well, this all means the game at the moment in the demo is more about blocking, guarding. Blocking receives chip damage, but you can then regenerate that by attacking the enemy immediately. Alternatively, if you perfect block an enemy attack, you'll take no damage and also damage the enemy's weapon. You can break their weapons entirely too. And this plays quite a big role in the bosses, at least in the demo. If you do enough of these perfect blocks, you can build up like a stagger effect on the enemies, and then you can hit them with a strong attack to knock them down, and then follow up with a critical attack. Being based on Pinocchio, who is also the main character, you have a puppet robot arm thing that can be upgraded, and it seems like telling lies will play into the game in some way too. The setting is a sort of dark Victorian Gothic horror aesthetic. Lots of rain, towering buildings that will certainly put you in mind of Yharnam, and decrepit enemies for you to pummel. The demo has fairly low enemy variety, but I mean, it's a demo. I'm not going to expect, a million enemy types. I assume the final game will ramp it up a bit there. And there's a few bosses for you to headbutt. As far as Souls clones go, this is one of the better ones I've played. But that also isn't a very high bar. The majority of Souls clones I've played have been underwhelming, to put it politely, if not downright miserable, to put it less politely. Neo is about the only one I can wholeheartedly suggest. Code Vein was good for a certain audience. Lies of P, well, the aesthetics and the atmosphere are there. Walking around the levels is interesting, while the placement of enemies, again, early on in the demo, was a little repetitive in how almost all enemies felt like they're doing the whole, there's an enemy that you can see, but then there's another enemy hiding behind a corner that you can't see to trick you thing. The combat does have some interesting ideas though. If you're out of not Estus, you can hit enemies and play well to regenerate a bit just by smacking them. You can sharpen your weapon by sort of grinding it on your special robot hand, as the weapon durability is kind of like Dark Souls 2 levels, where it goes down pretty quick, so you've got to keep an eye on it. I have several issues with the demo though. The writing and the dialogue feels somewhat cheap. It's very hard to describe the feel of voice acting in a game. But Lies of P feels like a Korean MMORPG's voice acting. Have you ever played Black Desert Online or Terra, for example? It isn't bad, like it isn't noticeably bad. It isn't Dynasty Warriors 3. You flaming idiots, take this. But it's a little utilitarian, generic. A game like this would have benefited from something bespoke. It is a little odd that we have an Italian story being set in a city looking more London than Florence, shall we say. Not an issue, just an observation. As for the gameplay, though, well, considering how important the perfect guard mechanic is, it feels very inconsistent and overly frustrating at times, because the enemy attacks often have very weird and jerky movements. Now, most of them, they are puppets, so I get them having jerky movements, but the strange ramping of their attack speeds, for example. They'll start up fast, then slow down, and then speed up again. This means it boils down to just memorization of the timing, as opposed to reacting to it visually. Not a huge fan of that. Shadows Die Twice managed it a lot better, if you ask me. It was far more generous with the timings to boot. On top of that, there are some very wonky hitboxes in Lies of P. But again, it's a demo, so I can't be too harsh on it. The more unique things that this game has going for it, swapping out puppet parts and weapon hilts, the Fable arts, which are weapon arts and so on, they help keep the combat feel relatively fresh and engaging. And of course, just like any Souls game, you can spend your not souls to level up various stats at the not bonfires, upgrade your weapons with not titanite shards, and build your P however you like. Speaking of the PC version, that's where I played the demo, it offers the option to run above 60 FPS, which is nice for those who enjoy doing so. Will I get the final game though? Probably not, at least not at launch. But if you are hungry for Souls-style games, I think you could do a lot worse than Lies of P. That said, you could do a little better too. Thanks so much for watching though. Till next time, ciao.